All right, Peter, we can go ahead and get started, and I'll let people in as we go.
Terrific. Well, welcome everyone. Peter Culver from Wealthrive. Exciting program today. Going to talk about AI, how it can help you improve your business, and also how it can help you improve the business of the clients you work with. We're excited today. We have Michael Rainone and Stuart Ebner, founders of Proactive Technology Group. They're active in both aspects, as well as Dave Overton, the founder and CEO of Symph. Special shout out to Dave. Dave lives in the Philippines and he's joining us today at 11:30 p.m. his time.
Good morning to
The
you.
question is it really Dave or is it Dave's agent? But I think it's really Dave. Why don't we just start first briefly with just an introduction of high level what your organizations do and just in general how you're using AI, and then we'll really dig into it in more detail. So Stu, I think you were going to give a brief introduction of
Sure.
Proactive, and then I'll pass it to Dave to tell us about Sim.
Well, good morning or good afternoon or good evening, predicated on what time zone you're sitting in currently. But so I'm the managing partner of Proactive as of today, though that may very well change over the next few weeks as I'm starting my retirement. Michael and I have been partners for 25 years, but have worked together for close to 30 years. Sounds like a very long time, as you could tell by the picture. Michael's probably 20 years my junior, and he is going to continue the process of Proactive. We're a company of 35 people. We've had almost all organic growth, meaning we've grown just by referral and reference alone. Um, we've focused on managed service providing, which is the standard IT support type of thing that you see. We've spun off a company that's focusing on defense and defense contractors, and now pushing very, very hard into AI. We've utilized it ourselves to improve our processes and have seen what it can do, and have impressed us and have saved us time, money, effort, energy, and made us a better company. And Michael's focus in our company now is really doing those same things for business. And we are definitely a very business focused company. Yes, we're certainly a tech company, but we are very much focused on clients' business and how to make them better, how them function better, improve business processes, and AI just really fits right into that. So I'll turn that over to the next, and thank you very much for
Good.
your time.
Thanks. So Dave, tell us a little bit about Symph and your background and high level, how you're using AI, not just for business. I know you'll talk about a part of what your company does relates more to social good and those kinds of things. So give us a brief
Yeah.
introduction of you and your company.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. And I built a company called Symph. We've been in business for 15 years. We mainly do software design and development. We do that for clients who come to us with their ideas. And we like to say that we can take their idea and turn it into reality. We've been doing that. We have a team of about 88 people, if I'm correct right now. And we've been building solutions for clients like the World Bank, the government of the Philippines, private sector, startups, everything in between. I would say our real passion is to build startups and technology that solves problems that people face. So obviously we are in the developing world, and so part of that is looking at how can technology really be a game changer, for people here who are trying to thrive and not just survive anymore, right? And so a lot of what we lean into specifically with AI is how can AI build solutions that would enable them, that would empower them. So looking at things like education, looking at things as workforce empowerment, retraining, things like that, because call center agents are a very big part of the economy here in the Philippines. And will that be replaced by AI is the question that we're leaning into and trying to think of. How will society develop, adapt, and succeed, and ultimately thrive in spite of what we might be afraid of with AI.
Great. So a lot of stuff to touch on. We'll just kind of dive into it randomly. So I think there's always a tendency when something like AI comes out to sort of embrace it so fully that you may ignore its limitations. And Michael, you and I were having a conversation the other day about, you can't always assume that if you give a math problem to AI, it ends up with the perfect answer. So maybe unpack a little bit, are there specific areas where you need to be careful when you're using AI, and double check or triple check whatever it is you're asking it to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the AI large language models are trained on most of the information on the internet. And just like when you go for a Google search and you're looking for things, it can pull back wrong information quite regularly. Also, when it's calculating things, like if you have large data sources and you're looking to calculate numbers, things like that, it will try to get through it in a period of time, and it will just sometimes come back to you with an answer that may satisfy what it's looking for, but it can be very often the wrong answer. So one of the things that you can do to combat that is look for citations, right? Make sure that when it's giving you back information, it's telling you where it's getting that information from, and it's okay for it to give you back that it doesn't know the answer, right? So you can prompt the AI chatbots and you could prompt the systems to give you back the citations and make sure that what you're looking at is accurate. The other thing you could do is, when you're looking at it, use a system called like a RAG system, which is a retrieval augmentation system, which it will go and look at. You could load up information that it will train itself on, and instead of just going directly out to what it's been trained on, it will look at what you've provided to it to give you back information. Like you could provide it with all of your company SOPs, things like that, and it will look at that first to try to give back that information instead of just randomly pulling that data through.
So one thing we were talking about before we went live is a new application, if that's the right word, of AI, something known as vibe coding. And maybe Dave, unpack that for a little bit for us, what that means. I'm assuming it's probably, you guys are experts, but probably me included, the people listening in are not as expert as you. So unpack the
Sure.
vibe coding, how someone might use that, what kind of business it might be applicable to.
Yeah, definitely. So I would definitely say vibe coding is probably specific to people who are in software development, right? And the term was coined by a guy named Andre Karpathy, right? So he did a lot of AI, open AI. He was with Tesla prior to that, and he just sort of talked about how you can lean into this new process of creating things, and sort of it's not just the way that things are created, but it's sort of a mindset. Now, in terms of what's actually happening and how do you do it, I would say it's changed a lot of the way that we build software. So we even use this, we leaned into it. We actually just created something, we called it Speed Run. It was like a 2-week or a 14-day workshop where we were taking people's ideas and then building apps using vibe coding and using some of that. Now, obviously, it makes life easier if you're experienced in software development, right? Because you can just build things. And how do you do that? You start with something like a requirement document. And you would feed that into the AI and you would say, okay, I have this concept. I want you to build this type of system. I want you to build a website that has these features on it. And basically you give that to the AI. So there's many applications that handle this now. Cursor is probably one of the more well-known ones. Even Microsoft's Visual Studio Code, you can do it there with Copilot. But basically, it takes those instructions and it will start building an application for you. Michael mentioned one while we were talking about beforehand of Lovable. Actually, huge company growth. Another one, Replit. They've been in that space for a long time. And basically, you can talk to it almost like you would ChatGPT, but the output is a working website. Now, you do have to take some caution with these things because you probably don't want to take this into production, especially if you're in financial services or things like that. If you're going to use data from customers, right, you want to be very careful with a lot of this stuff. There's some very big security vulnerabilities. Like, you shouldn't just kick the tires on this thing and let it go loose and expect the world to work out for you. But definitely building something like a concept, or maybe an MVP, we would call it in the startup world, to just test out your idea to see, is this viable? Would people try this? Can I make something? What would the working nature of this software be? I think it's a very exciting opportunity. So I would say, much like ChatGPT, you have to check your answers, right? But I feel that way with my colleagues too, right? I ask an employee for an answer. I have to check what they tell me. Is that really true? And I think you have to use that mindset with AI.
So, Michael, you gave a cool example of that, I think, more for personal use than anything else. But flying home from Minnesota, you used it to create something to help you with your investments. Maybe I think it's just fun to hear.
Yeah, so that was
the concept of AI, but practical applications of AI, right?
Well, I mean, one of the things I've done is like I was mentioning. So with vibe coding, you can just simply explain it to these software systems to create something for you. So, for example, I was driving home the other day, and I had an idea of building a calendar for my family to be more organized on certain things. So while I was driving home, I just logged into Lovable on my iPhone. I explained it to create a calendar system for my family. I named the kids, everybody who was involved and what their jobs and what they should be doing. And by the time the car drove home, I had an application up and running with a little calendar that my whole family could use. I could have everyone keep track of where the kids were. And it took me just describing it to the iPhone as the Tesla was driving me home. And by the time I got home, the application was up and running to the colors that I wanted and had all my kids in there and their calendars in there. And, we now use this application. So it was probably 10 minutes conversation and you could build an application, which I think is a really powerful thing for like everyone on this call, like to be able to use a tool like this. If you have maybe an application that you'd like to have in your business, maybe a dashboard that had some of your information on it, or almost anything that you can imagine, you could log into these systems and just truly just describe it in natural language, and it will build a system for you. Now, the thing that that David mentioned is I wouldn't put this out to the public. I wouldn't make sure that you have your credit card information, important financial information on it without having an expert get you that last part of it to make sure it's secured and it's properly built. But it will give you a visual or a proof of concept of something that you could envision. So it really levels the playing field so that almost any idea that you have, you could bring to fruition, within minutes, and it will build the application for you. So just to be clear, you could describe what you want. It takes a couple of minutes to iterate, ask you some questions, and it then will build a web-based application for you within 10, 15 minutes. It's pretty incredible.
So speaking of credit cards, you talked about maybe an interesting application, which is to have AI help you achieve the most efficient navigation of all your points on your credit card, right?
That's right. So that's somewhat new, and David and I were discussing this. There now, traditionally what we described was like a question answer type thing with chatbots, where you would, ask a question, it would return an answer. And what the new versions, when we talk about agents and things like that coming out, one of the newest things that came out that's probably one of the more exciting things I've seen in the last year has been Perplexity, is a company that does AI development. And they have traditionally been a chatbot type of thing that would integrate with different types of large language models, but they created their own browser. So it's very similar to a Google Chrome or Internet Explorer or Edge or some of the browsers that we're all familiar with. But the difference with this particular browser is while it acts similar to Chrome, there's a little assistant that's in there. So for instance, what I was telling you that I did was, you can log in. I logged in for just to test it. I logged into a Robinhood account that I have some money invested in. And I asked the assistant to look at what I had invested and give me some assessment of what my investments were and if they were smart, if there's some trades I need to do, and also to go out and do some market research and see if there was some money that I wanted to play with, maybe on like a day trading, and do some market research, come back to me some advice and give me some pointers on how I could trade through my Robinhood account if I wanted to allocate, let's say, $10,000 just to play around with. And it made some recommendations to me based on what I had seen. And while I didn't execute on the trades, it very well could have executed on the trades. And I did follow through, and some of those, and I think I would be up considerably now if I would have executed at the time. So the difference with this browser is not only is it just able to give you this advice, it can actually take over the control of the browser and actually do the work for you, including doing the trades. We've also used it for a web-based application we have internally, like maybe there was some functionality I didn't know how to use. But because it's trained on almost everything on the internet, I asked it to create different workflows for me, and it would take over the mouse and create those workflows in our PSA system. So it's pretty powerful in the fact that it can actually take over your computer and do what you need to do, booking flights. And what I described to you too is leveraging points that I have in Amex and Chase, and not only booking flights from me or potentially booking flights from me, but also knowing how to the arbitrage between the different point systems and which one would be more appropriate for which flight that I want to take. So that was pretty impressive use of doing it. And it's from the Perplexity browser that just came out a couple of weeks ago.
So we have a question from the audience, and try and keep this as interactive, but someone has asked, how can AI foster, this is maybe similar to your calendar thing, Mike, but maybe taking it one step further. How can AI foster trust and communication, collaboration in this case, within the family office community, while strengthening multi-general communication, priorities, things like that. So not just keeping track of data, but promoting communication across a group of people. Can it be used in that regard?
It absolutely can. And I think we're starting to pick up on agents, right? Like where it's proactively looking at this data set and giving you an analysis and giving you return back that information. So now you're talking about more customized building AI systems, right? There are platforms out there that you could leverage these powerful large language models, and you could train the models in a way that they'll give you the information that's required. So if you were to talk to a family office and you found out what was important to them and where their different data, so perhaps they have data in SharePoint, perhaps it's in a CRM system, perhaps it's in a database, what you do is you link these large language models to these internal systems, and then you build out what you'd like to get from those different systems and how they should connect to it and how they should respond back to it. And those agents can be running all the time. They could be running once, twice a day and providing input to the different people within the organization. So that's something that could be really interesting. One of the things that we built internally here was we built an AI system that will listen to all of the phone calls in our service delivery department. It transcribes every phone call and every conversation we have with all of our clients, and it can give a sentiment value to each one of those conversations. So if there was an unhangry, like for example, if there was an upset customer or someone was frustrated, it will then notify the service manager that, hey, we should check this conversation. It seems like somebody was potentially upset when they spoke to someone. And that person who they've been speaking to could have been one of our agents that's not working from inside the office. We wouldn't have known about it. But because this system is listening to everything all the time, it can give us real-time information on that type of feedback, which is something that no human could possibly do. So when we talk about how we could tie it into different systems like home offices, we just need to understand what the rule set that they want to be notified about and how often and how it ties into that data and how it responds to the individual person.
And could you train it? Let's just say, I'm sure this is only one of your clients, but someone of your clients is on a phone call and they're really upset, right? They're jazzed about something. Could you train the system to let you know, hey, Mr. Jones was just on a call. He's very upset about such and such. You should reach out to him. Here's a synthesis of what he was upset about. And maybe it would even tell you what to tell the guy as an answer.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it does. Yeah, so that's exactly what it does. So it notifies the service manager now. So like it would notify the service manager of that, right? So we have a system that does a rating of the calls that it will do. It will rate the call from 1 to 10, meaning 10 being a perfect call, 1 being poor. But there's also flags on it. Someone's cursing, someone's crying, if it could determine that. If someone wants to speak to a manager or those things, that would flag a call to be looked at and notified immediately. So some of the other things, you just might get a scoring of a call, but it's not as important. But if something really goes wrong, it then would notify someone. And those are the things that we could build with sentiment. AI is very good at doing assessments of things, right? Sentiment, it's very good at. Number crunching, not as good.
Interesting. So talk a little bit about, is there a reason why it's not good? You would think that number crunching is just objective, right? You give it data points, you ask for an answer. What is it that makes it not so accurate in that arena?
When you talk about, because AI, when you're connecting it to large data sets or you're connecting it to calculations, it's pulling data from different places, right? It's non-structured data. Whenever you're doing calculations, you're much better off putting the data organized into a database, like the traditional way that we've always done it. It's always calculating different tables. So it knows that when you're looking for an AR report or you're looking for these different things, the data is all organized in very specific tables. So when it's doing these calculations, the calculations will always be the right number. It's looking at this column against this column, and it's giving you this answer. It's doing a math equation. But when you're doing it through AI and you're looking at large data sets, it has to assess what you're asking it, and it could select the wrong information very easily, and it could miscalculate where you're asking it, right? So it's very good with non-structured data. There's a lot of mistakes that can be made. When data is structured, put inside of a database, you'll always have more accurate. Like an Excel spreadsheet, the formulas are very specific. You're not asking a question for it to guess or to just pull random information. You're telling it exactly which column versus which column and what calculation it's supposed to do. With AI, when you're pointing it at things and asking it to do things, it can get confused or it could misinterpret what you're asking it.
So slightly different tack. Because we've alluded to it briefly, we're working on a trying to use AI in a project that we're working on right now, and we've been pricing out the thing. And the biggest component of the cost was the security component of it, right? In other words, protecting information. And maybe both of you guys could talk about how much of a risk that is. Are there things you can do to protect the data? We obviously work in part in the client service area, financial services area. People are very sensitive about the confidentiality of their own information. How to, maybe Dave, talk a little bit about how that sort of data protection, cyber protection, how does all of that get woven into this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely this is where there still is a lot of cost with the development of things like that. And the main cost is that you have to have someone who really understands how to secure things, how to store the data securely. And then also what you're giving say the AI agents or the LLMs access to, right? So I think two kind of viewpoints of security vulnerabilities. Like for me, example, I want AI to handle my email, my inbox, right? Like I want it to just take care of everything. But much like a human vulnerability, if someone emails my AI and says, I'm sending a password reset, please send me the code, the AI would just follow those instructions, right? So I think there are vulnerabilities that in some level of what we're doing, we haven't really fully thought that out. And so I think that is why security is still such an important thing, especially privacy. I think an example, we built an AI solution in the medical space for healthcare, right? Because AI is great at analyzing large sets of results, lab results, and really finding out those types of things. But at the same time, how do you store that data securely, right? How do you keep that information confidential? How do you handle that? And so that is where a lot of the time, the energy, and the investment of building these systems goes in. And that's where, honestly, it's costly, but it should be, because we have to think through this as we build the future in a way that's safe, and you're not just releasing people's personal information.
So Michael, Stuart, I know you guys are active even apart from AI in the cybersecurity type arena. Maybe you could add to that if you want to, how kind of meld those two worlds together, take advantage of everything that AI has to offer, but not release sensitive information to the public.
Well, you want to put on data control and guardrails, right? So there may, if you're tying it into different places, you want to make sure, for example, that you may not want to tie your whole organization into your accounting folder that's in SharePoint that has all people's salaries and things like this, right? So we want to make sure that if you're building out a solution and you're giving it access to things, that the data you're providing it is not data that you want to have everyone in the organization have access to, or you want to make sure that you're setting up different levels of access. The other thing that you want to be careful about is using public models, like putting your information into ChatGPT, free version of ChatGPT, or Perplex, or these different models. When you're using these models, they're able to train on this information. So you don't want to just put in social security numbers, things like that, in public information, or even your corporate data inside of these public versions of these tools. Now, each one of these tools make private versions of these tools as well, so that they're not training on that data. But I would still be careful depending on what type of information in there. You wouldn't want to put in personal PII data, social security numbers in any of these systems at all. The way that you would make it work is they do have offline versions of large language models that you can train on. Meta has an offline model. Even ChatGPT now has an offline model where you could run that model in your own environment. You could put it in Azure, you could put it in AWS, and it's your own server running a large language model that could be isolated inside of that environment. So if you're asking questions to this model, the data never traverses those networks. So you could train your data off these offline models of large language models, incorporate what you want to incorporate where it could have some risk in there, and you're making sure that you're isolating this AI system from only being hosted by you with the security that you put in place. So it's never training on it. It's never going outside of your environment. And when we
Very
build out, custom solutions, those are the things that we take into account. Is what we're learning, is what the AI model knows about you, is it potentially going to be public information? Is it okay if it gets leaked out? And if it's really secure, like we do work for companies who do work for the DoD, where that absolutely cannot happen, and they'll lose compliance if they do that. So it has to be isolated. And we call air gapping the large language models. They don't even have access to the internet at all.
So we've been talking a fair amount about how to use AI externally, if that's the right word, with your clients,
Right.
with your customers. Talk a little bit about how a business might use it for its own planning, right? In other words, how could I, as a business owner, use AI? Should I go in this direction or that direction? Or would this initiative make sense? Do you guys use it in that regard to help make your own business better in the future? Dave, jump in if you have.
Yeah,
I
Dave,
feel like Stuart, I want to call on Stuart. He hasn't said much. Stuart, do you want to take that one?
You're muted, Stu.
I generally defer to Michael for almost all AI because that's really become his central world. I'm very much a backseat player in that at this point. So I'd love to say something wise and intelligent about those things, but I think Michael would probably be better suited for those types of answers.
No worries, no worries. I just didn't want you to feel left
okay.
out.
No,
I think
not at all.
good. No, I mean, just from my perspective, I think maybe a couple of quick answers. I like to just soundboard off of AI. So I record a lot of just meetings or things on my own. And then I have that transcript of those ideas, and then I can chat with those transcripts later. And I found a lot of value in doing that, right? It helps me think through those ideas. I can ask it questions. I can have it poke holes in those things. I think if I were advising a client on how to start thinking about this, I would spend a little time thinking about how to prompt AI, right? Like chat GPT, Claude, from Anthropic, or even what Perplexity has. They're all very good, but the better you're leading into the prompting, I think the more output you can get. And so there's a ton of great prompts online. I think a few collections that I recall, there was one that was somewhat like a McKinsey consultant, right? And so you can prompt the AI to think and act like a McKinsey consultant, and then you can sort of present a problem, and it will think through that with you and use a lot of the information that is on the web, right? Like Michael mentioned it earlier, these have been trained with a massive amount of information, so they understand the way McKinsey thinks about problem solving. And so I think you can do prompt engineering is what we call it, but to be honest, it's more just the quality of the prompt. I think another thing that is always useful for me when I frame this is I like to think of AI as just my colleague, as someone who works with me, because that sort of opens up the conversation in a different way than if I'm just chatting with an app or something like that. So if you think about it that way, you can almost give it different personas, right? Like maybe you want it to be the devil's advocate and tell you why this isn't going to work. Or maybe you need, to have more of a positive spin. You can basically engineer those prompts, but obviously you have to remember that you are biasing it, right? So you have to think through that. But I love that you can actually think through that. Now, I think for me, the most exciting part is probably the agents, because you can think through what are the easy to automate ideas, problems, steps that I have in my business, and how can I create agents that would do this work for me?
So maybe either one of you give a couple of practical examples in your business or businesses where an agent would be helpful, how you would set it up and how it would be implemented.
Do you want to start that, John and Dave? I mean, I can go, but I don't want to.
Go ahead.
So the agents that we use, since we're a managed services company, one of the things that we need to do is we need to figure out when tickets come in, when someone makes a request, we need to make sure like where those tickets are routed to, the severity of those tickets. If someone's requesting a password reset, that would go to one group. But if a network is down or if there's been potentially a breach, So what we do with our agents is that they're intercepting every inbound service ticket that comes in. The agents are intercepting those tickets. They're assessing what the severity of those tickets are, and they're categorizing them on a scale from 1 to 5, meaning, 1 being severity 1, which is the highest rating. That would go to a technical lead that would be available to take care of it right away, and they'll scale them down from a 5, which would be someone has just a general question. So they're able to, the agents are able to route these tickets, because we have a pretty large organization of service people, and they're able to route these tickets appropriately so that things that are coming in front of people are the things that they should be handling. We don't want every ticket to come in with the same weight, so it's able to automatically scale, assess what's happening in real time and put the right ticket in front of the right group of people so they can be handled in appropriate time. That's something that's been a real game changer for us too, because we get such an influx of data, it becomes hard to kind of weed through it in real time. And we'd find back in the old days that we'd be sometimes spending time on things that weren't at the highest priority. Now, when they come in, they're prioritized for us. So that's a great use case where it's able to just make these analysis in seconds and put it and route the tickets into the right group. That's a great use case for AI. And we found that that's been, really powerful. And then they go back with the phone conversations, assessing the quality of phone calls, transcribing each phone call, helping people train on those phone calls of what they did right and what they did wrong. It's really a powerful thing that you just couldn't have the capacity, 5 years ago, to have someone listening to every phone call and giving that type of analysis would just be, you just couldn't do it. There's just not enough time in the day. So with these new tools, it just becomes so powerful that you have this dashboard or this interface into your own business that you just couldn't have the manpower to do years ago, and now you can. And that's where I think you get the biggest bang from AI right at this moment, is just the amount of work it can do and the speed in which it can do it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can give one other use case, sort of on the
Good.
social impact side. But
Yes.
I think one of the things that we saw, teachers in the Philippines, they spend a lot of their time doing lesson plans, right? And it's not that lesson plans are inherently bad, but they're just, one of those routines of things that you have to do. But wouldn't it be more powerful if they could spend time actually helping the students, right? And we all know sort of the holy grail of education would be one-on-one type of education models. And teachers end up spending so much of their time in grading, curriculum building, and everything else, but not actually teaching. And so we used AI. We created a product called Lesson Planner. And basically we took sort of this government mandated lesson plan structure, and we created an AI agent that will then they answer a few questions, they put in some details, and it will generate lesson plans that fit within the standard. So trying to save teachers time so that they can actually get back to what they should be doing, or what's most important, right? So I think use cases like that are very interesting. Financial services, maybe there are different forms or templates that there are questions that certain customers have to answer and you have to think about. I think AI is really good at that type of flow where there's a very clear process and documentation flow. I think that is very, very easy for AI to really just maybe 10x your output.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I've done too is, I've tied AI into my inbox. I mean, so I don't do support for clients anymore, so passwords don't come to me. So that's more or less, I'm not as worried about it. But what it is really helpful as is because I get such a high volume of email. I've been we've had this business now for almost 23 years, and I get probably 400 or 500 emails sometimes a day. And what is really helpful is going through my email over the last 30 days. I have a automation that happens. It happens every 3 days. It goes through my emails and looks through my whole mailbox and looks at, is there anything that I should have responded to, understanding what parameters I had set up there, and did I miss any emails? Is anyone waiting for a response from me? And then it will just give me a report automatically in that morning, and I can go through and say, oh wow, I missed this email. This is something I should respond to. And more than not, it's found things that I have potentially missed, which is super helpful. That's something that's really easy to set up. You can set it up with ChatGPT. It's native now to that, as long as you're using Google or you're using Microsoft 365. It's really great with planning for your calendar too. So you could tie it to your calendar. So if someone asks you, hey, are you free on this day? You could just ask your ChatGPT to say, hey, am I free on that day? And it'll give you back a response sometimes faster than you can get to your calendar and kind of figure out where you're at with it. I find that that's really helpful. one of the things, I don't know if we've gotten into this, Dave, was like, setting up in ChatGPT, setting up custom GPTs, which is really easy to do, which I think a lot of people don't do.
Yeah.
Have you worked with that at all? Maybe, I don't know if you want to kind of explain what that is.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, if you're familiar with custom GPTs, great. If you're not, I think it's super easy to do. You just log into ChatGPT, and basically what you can do is you can use some customizations to give it a bit of context, right? So you can give it a specific type of prompt, like a way that it's going to think about what you're going to do. You can upload a few documents usually to give it even more context. So if there's, say, a specific format of a document that you wanted to create, then you can have a custom GPT for that. So we do this a lot with sales templates or different like proposal structures that we need to create. So we can just give it a few, samples. These are the types of structures that we use for this type of invoice, this type of, sales proposal. And then what we can do is we just trigger that custom GPT. We give it the prompt, we give it some data, create this invoice for Peter Culver, and then generate this, here are the details, and boom, it will give us the PDF output, right? Like, so we've pre-programmed some of those steps. There are also like a ton of them out there that other people have created. And, as with everything, like, don't trust every Google search, don't trust every agent that's out there, but you can solve a lot of problems by checking those out. Michael, which ones have you tried?
So the one that I really like that we created, so we have the Teams version of ChatGPT, and what I thought was really cool is, so we have for when we're selling products, we have a specific group of products that we sell. We don't just sell any technology. We have to have the ones that our team are familiar with using. So what we did is we built this custom GPT that kind of lists all of the devices that we are selling. So, we sell Cisco, we sell Meraki, Cisco Meraki, we'll sell Sonic, well, we sell a bunch of these products. So we kind of loaded up what type of products that we are selling, that we're comfortable with, our line of business applications, the software that we use. And we've even loaded up some like prior quotes that we have done, so that when we have a new opportunity out there, they don't have to worry. They don't have to get, like, every time we get a new opportunity, we don't have to bring a senior engineer who's a technical engineer to be able to kind of say, okay, this is how you put it together. Now we can have, like, account managers really get about 90% of the way there with proposals, properly technically spec'd, properly with the tools that we use, the software we use, the hardware we use, and get it to the point of almost ready to go. Now, we don't send it out directly after that, but we'll have our SAs look at that afterwards, validate that, hey, this looks really good. You want to make a change here, here, and here. So instead of them taking an hour and a half, 2 hours to get the SAs to go in there and really put the whole thing together from beginning to end, now they're just dotting the I's, crossing the T's, the proposals go out 10 times faster. And you could do it with almost any organization, HVAC companies, anyone who has a standard that they use. It's very, very easy to build that out. And then you could share it with your team. So we have the Teams version of ChatGPT. So now my whole team can share that GPT that I created. So that's been, a real time saver, I think.
Yeah, I agree. We do a similar thing. We sort of lean over to Claude and Anthropic side of the world, but we use both. And I would encourage people, you should try them all out, right? Like, you can test them against each other. Some are better, kind of like the card points that Michael was mentioning earlier, right? Like, use your Amex card for certain transactions, use your Chase card for other transactions. I think GPTs and you should lean into all of these tools. One of the ones I was going to mention, is project updates, right? Like, these are emails that you have to send out to clients to let them know the project status and how it's going. And just honestly, like, we've all written those emails, and how much time have we spent composing those emails only to realize, like, after writing 100 or 200, they're basically all the same, right? And so I think, streamlining. So we have projects in Claude where we do a similar type of thing. We just have this template that we follow. You put in the information. Now, I think Michael brings up a good point, because this concept or phrase that we have is a human in the loop, right? A lot of the work that we're doing now is we become editors, right? We become that human in the loop, that the AI does some of the heavy lifting, if you will, or just maybe the building blocks of what you need. And then you check it. You have to verify it. You have to validate. Is this right? Is this accurate? Are these numbers correct? Is it doing the proper math, or is it counting too many or too few R's in strawberry? So I think there are some key questions that you really have to dig into, and you have to be that editor or human in the loop to really check before you send things out. But huge time saver.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest takeaway too. I think if anything we could say is, like, these tools are super powerful, but there has to be a human in the loop at this point. You cannot
Yeah.
We've all heard that story of the attorney who was arguing a case and made a
Right.
presentation to the judge, and they were referencing a case number, and he sent this great report into the judge, and then the other counsel had it and looked up the actual case numbers that he was referencing, and it turned out that it just completely hallucinated the whole thing. It sounded very authoritative, and it sounded like it made a lot of sense, but the reality is that it had hallucinated this whole case. So when he was submitting it to the judge took it, gave it to the other side, and when they looked it up, it was completely fabricated. So he obviously got into a lot of trouble and really looked like an idiot. So I think that while we use these tools and they're super powerful, every single time you should have a human in the loop. That should be you or your team, making sure it's never going from you to your customer, or you could really embarrass yourself in your company. That's a big takeaway, I would say, from this whole thing here.
So maybe one flip side of that. So that's the importance of, having the human check just to make sure the information's accurate. Maybe there's another side of that with the advent of agents and all of that. Does the client wonder if they'll ever get to talk to a real person as it becomes so automated that it lacks the personal touch? But maybe there's a way to use AI to build in that somewhat personal touch. I don't know if you guys have thoughts about that, so that, you don't feel like you're getting all your information just from a computer and never from a human being.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, right? Like we've all called those customer service lines and just been frustrated punching numbers in. I honestly think, though, that AI can help with that, right? In a sense, because I think what we're seeing with agents and the potential that I see, maybe not there yet, but in the future, it can handle so much that I would need to handle on its own, right? It wouldn't really need to reference a human, because if you're training it properly and if the company has built it in a way where it has access to the right amount of information at the right time, it can actually do the job that I want it to do, right? And also, as the world changes, sometimes, I don't know if it's the younger generations, I'm feeling a little older these days, but they just want to text, they just want to message. And that is a great use case for agentic AI, right? Because you're not actually wanting to talk with someone, you're just wanting to handle it on your phone or do something that way. So I think there is a ton of potential for that. At the same time, it can really, as Michael mentioned, analyze the sentiment, right, of the conversation and basically escalate the calls even faster than someone who is just a human could do it. Now, a use case that we did slightly similar, not in the customer service space, but was for doctors. Think about a doctor's visit. You go in, you're telling them all of your problems. The doctor's kind of listening. They're kind of jotting down some notes. Maybe they're typing on a computer. You're wondering if they're really getting everything. Are they on their phone? You don't know what's actually going on. And then before you know it, they've just checked you out, looked you up and down, and then here's your prescription, or you're done. What we realized is that if we can make doctors' jobs easier so they don't have to do those notes, we can record the conversation, we can transcribe it, we can actually create the prescriptions, we can do all of that with AI. That enables the doctor to actually have that basic human touch, right, that I think we all want, especially there. Another use case I heard, people were using some of these meeting recorders to record conversations, especially if they were, had a diagnosis in cancer, because there's such complexity to what these doctors are telling you that they felt overwhelmed by all the information. And so they were basically recording what the doctor was saying and recording this. And they were saying, afterwards, then they could chat, they could learn more, they could ask more questions. So I think there's some great use cases out there.
And a lot of times it's like the commoditized type thing, right? Like if it's the same question over and over, AI doesn't get tired of answering the same question, but a doctor would, right? So like a lot of times if that information is coming and then that last bit of it can then go to the doctor to validate what the AI source said, to say, yeah, like a bunch of questions were answered, and yes, I agree with the approach, or I disagree with the approach. But the point is that like just a lot of the noise, like you could never have the capacity that you have when you have an AI helping you front load that, right? So just the redundant questions, but like when you get down to the real important things, I still think that a doctor or an expert in that field should be the last one to validate what the AI source says. But it can give back information. I think it's great, and it arms people with information. When you go to the doctor, you can put into your you can put in what you get the results of a test, and you have some talk. You're talking intelligently to the doctor instead of having no idea what you're looking at. So you could, run it through AI, have some questions to ask the doctor, and then they become much more relevant conversations opposed to just not knowing anything.
So obviously, maybe two different ends of the spectrum. So some people on the call are probably very knowledgeable about AI. Many business owners are probably not that knowledgeable about it. It starts to seem a little bit dizzying if you have that intuitive sense that it could help your business, but you're not really sure where to start, how to tackle it, what tools to use. What's the best way for someone who's kind of inching into this to figure out how to use it most effectively in their business?
I think one of the things they wanted to do is really just take a look at what the processes that they're currently doing in their business. Are there processes that are manual processes that are very redundant type processes where someone's copying and pasting something from an Excel spreadsheet into a database? Are there things that could be done and automated by a smart AI system that are really not, people who are doing it are not really adding any value to the company, but they're just redundant processes that can be automated? Those things are really, really easy for AI to do and replace monotonous type tasks like that. The other thing you can do if you really want to understand what the capabilities of AI is hire a firm to come in and really do assessment of what your day-to-day processes are, how your business flow works. Someone who's not just an AI or a technical person, but somebody who understands business process and can kind of go through each step of your business and understand where they could be optimized, whether it be leveraging AI, structured databases, or just changing processes. I think as a business owner, I think maybe every 5 years, you should really look at all the processes that you're doing in your organization and figure out ways if they can be optimized. Because a lot of times people just continue to do things the way they've always done them, not because it's the best way to do it, just because it's the easy way to do it or the way that they've always done it. Now that we have AI here, it really makes sense for every organization to look at how they're doing how their workflows are currently working and how they can be optimized. Because if you're not doing it, you could be sure your competitors are.
So other end of the spectrum, looking forward, obviously, what's happened in this world in a year and 2 years is phenomenal. What are the new frontiers that are out there that maybe people should be paying attention or watching out for to continue to take advantage of AI as it grows and expands?
Well, the
Yeah,
self-learning.
that's a great question. Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Dave, I'll let you take it. Yeah, so the self-learning is pretty impressive because I think now we're starting to see where we're training these models. Humans are training the models. The models are getting smarter, and they keep evolving with every iteration and every training. We all know that ChatGPT 5 just came out, and it's much smarter than 4 was, and they just keep growing and growing by human training. But what's starting to happen now is the AI is training the AI on different levels so that they'll continue to get smarter and smarter and gain more intelligence to the point where they'll be, very soon they'll be smarter than the smartest human beings, and they'll be able to go above and beyond what we're capable of, which will be really exciting to see breakthroughs in science and breakthroughs in mathematics. And we'll see the world change so rapidly that it seems that we had the Moore's law, which was every 4 years compute doubles, but we're seeing technology change. I was away in Italy for a month, and I stayed away from technology while I was there, and when I came back after a month, there was noticeable differences in AI technologies from just 4 weeks. So we're seeing just this rapid increase of growth and intelligence happen so fast that I think that in our lifetime, we'll keep seeing these iterations of growth and we'll keep seeing changes. And I think we'll live longer lives. I think that, we'll all have our own agents that will be our personalized agents that will be talking to us in our cars, on our phones, and having one long conversation and be an advisory. So I think we'll see a lot of changes in the next 2 to 3 years that if we step back now and thought about it, it would blow our minds. But because they'll come in gradually, I think it'll just become part of life. Up to Dave, I don't know what your impression of what you think is coming.
Yeah, definitely. I think if I look out on the trajectory of the next 5 years, I'm excited. obviously there's a lot of concern too, right? Like I'm pro-human. I have kids. I want my kids to have a great life. I don't necessarily want AI to take over and just eradicate humanity. And that being said, I do think that, yeah, we are on the cusp of something that is very, very big. You know, I think super intelligence is something that's coming where it will be able to unlock new discoveries, new things that we never thought that were possible, right? Just because of limitations of our own capacity to think. I do think that if I were to predict the future, you know, my hope is I still want that combination of like the Jetsons meets Star Trek, where basically we could produce food, you know, in a machine, and then we all have a Rosie at home and we can fly in our car. But you know, we're still waiting on that. And if you go back to some of the roots of even the IT boom, right, in the 1960s, a lot of the original writing from a lot of the early authors in ARPANET and things like that were actually agents, right? They were describing that they wanted agents that would work for them and do those things. I think that we're on the cusp of that, you know. So if I would say in the next 2 years, I think we will all have agents in our workforce. I think we will have agents doing a variety of different things in our households as well. And I think that that's something that's exciting. It's a little scary. It's a little frightening when you think about how much technology would be in our lives. But if you think about it from a perspective of like, say, 5 years ago or even 10 years ago, we didn't have like the phones that we have now, right? And so much of what we do now is now embedded into that. You know, do we even carry credit cards? Not a lot of us do, right? It's in our phone, it's in our watch. We just tap it, you know. And so, I mean, I think we've gone through these progressive steps over time, and it's easy for us to forget and realize that that is what we're doing now, but I would say it's going faster. And I'm excited about where AI is taking us. And I think that we as humans have to be very intentional with what we build and with what we do.
So, you know, you work in the Philippines. Philippines is a big call center area. There might be a lot of fear there and other places around maybe what's a short-term displacement of tasks currently performed. Is there a silver lining where AI can help solve that issue or create, you know, a new reality so people aren't displaced?
I think there is, you know, but I would say that there is definitely going to be pain in the short term, right? Like people could be displaced from their jobs. Even just thinking about like driverless vehicles, I think that is going to change the way that even the transportation sector runs in a lot of cities around the world. I think
Right.
that's for the positive. You know, even if I think about call center agents here in the Philippines, like no offense, a lot of them have to deal with angry Americans like me, you know, and I'm not the nicest guy to talk to when my internet or whatever isn't working or my credit card is this, you know, and so I don't know that these are dream jobs for these people, right? But in the short term, not having a job is a negative outcome and something that we have to address. So we have to think about how do we lean into empowering them? How do we lean in to enabling them to kind of be those editors or those humans in the loop in the short term, but then in the long term, I don't know exactly where everyone will end up, but I think my theory would be we will be able to create things more easily in the future. So maybe it's just everyone becomes a little more entrepreneurial for the services that you provide. You charge a premium for those human touch type of things where, you know, you're a premium provider of human touch service compared to the normal AI that everyone else gets, right? So I think there will be some differentiation that we will see in the future, but there will be some pain, you know, and it will be hard for those people who are really displaced and their jobs, you know, they have to figure out what am I going to do.
Cool. So we're coming up on the end of our time, and we always like to end super quickly, rapid fire, with just a bunch of rapid fire type questions. So like, you know, 3-word or 2-word answer, and I'll just alternate. So Dave, what's the most common misconception about AI?
I would say that it could think or that it's sentient. It's not yet.
Michael, what's one AI tool every business owner should try?
Well, I mean, ChatGPT, I would say, right? Like that's probably the easiest segue into AI. It's pretty user friendly. You just start it up, ask it questions, and get the results back. And keep iterating those questions. It's a very easy tool to use. One tool that I really like that ties into all my meetings is a product called Read.ai that ties into all of my calls, including this call. And so every Zoom call, every Teams call, every Google call, it jumps on as my assistant and it transcribes every call that I have or every meeting I have. And I have one dashboard where it shows me all of the things that I've said that I was going to do for people, and my to-dos and my takeaways are all there. And I find that tool's been really great. And that's something that people could look at as well.
Say the name of it again.
It's Read.ai.
Okay. Yep.
It's a great tool. I use it. But I think just the easiest segue in, if you haven't done it yet, I talk to people all the time, and I'm shocked that a lot of people still have not even used ChatGPT. I think it's a great tool to use, and it's not that big of a barrier to entry. Just go in, open it up, ask it a question.
And Peter,
So,
I have.
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I was gonna say I have a question that I saw some audience members allude to it, but I saw Microsoft listed that they recently listed a report of 40 jobs that they feel is most at risk of being taken over by AI, and some of those include music DJs, reporters, journalists, telemarketers, account clerks, and more. For business owners that are either hiring people in these specific roles, or maybe an audience member that is a DJ or an accountant, any advice for people when you get this report from Microsoft, who's really heavy into the AI game? So it seems like their data is very credible from either of the three of you.
I think it's just dig into the tools, right? So the new reality is AI is here. It's not going anywhere. People are going to leverage it. If traditionally you've been a DJ, for example, and not leveraged any of these tools, learn how to use these tools and leverage them so that you could be more advanced than the average person who's going to be playing with these tools and creating it. There'll always be room for experts. And now this is just another tool that we all need to learn to use. And if you don't, likely you'll be left behind.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the short term, the phrase we use is, it's not AI that's going to take your job, but it's someone using AI that's going to take your job. And so I think that, the counter to that is what Michael said: lean into it, learn how to do it. I think in leaning into it, you'll actually probably trigger more creativity about what you could be doing, right? It's not that we don't want DJs, it's that we all want our unique experience. And I think that's what AI is uniquely enabled to do. Like my DJ can be very unique to what I listen to and what I want throughout the time of my day. But if you're a DJ, you would also think about that. You would understand what people should be listening to. You would understand maybe how the waves will affect my mood and what I should be having like first thing in the morning, or then crunch time after lunch when I want to take a nap. So I think there are so many opportunities, even video creation, video professionals, right? Like the ones that I see, producers and directors, the ones that are leaning into these tools, they're creating amazing things that they could never create before. And so I would also lean into just experiences. I think this has been shifting in a lot of our world. Even look at the music recording industry and how much it's transitioned. It used to be about record sales, aka CDs, tapes, things like that. My kids don't even know what those are. And now it's about Taylor Swift concerts, right? And the revenue generation is in the experience. And so what I would also think about is, how does AI enable you to create amazing experiences?
Yeah,
cool.
Exactly.
Well, we're almost up on the end of the hour. Thank Dave, Michael, Stuart, sharing your time, your expertise, your inspiration about AI. You can see it on the screen. If you want to send follow-up questions, you can do that. And we've recorded this. We'll circulate it to the audience afterward. But very nice conversation back and forth. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think Samir has put up on the screen. You want to tell everybody, Samir, about next month's ThriveTalk?
Absolutely. So again, thanks everyone for joining us for this month's ThriveTalk. Again, we'll send out the recording, and not only that, we'll have a ton of clips of short form content, actually using AI to make these clips go out a lot faster, of our three amazing panelists. And if you have questions for them, or you want to do an AI assessment with Michael, you can email them at ai@ptg.co. And if you want to work with Dave, you can go to symph.ai. I hyperlinked it there, but we'll also put that in the email for you guys after. Next month, Peter and Noah are going to be covering a 60% AGI strategy that we've recently been working with clients. So Peter, maybe you can just give 10 seconds about, why this strategy is exciting, and next month what you and Noah will be talking about, which is very timely given that it'll be right after the quarterly estimates of September 15th.
Yeah, I mean, very, very simplistically, we use a strategy with a lot of our clients, which effectively enables them to get a 60% charitable deduction against their adjusted gross income, but they can purchase that deduction for about 20% of the value of the deduction. So if you're a high income earner, please tune in. It's one of the tools in our toolkit and one of our favorite missions, which is for business owners on their phone. There are two ways to get wealthy in America. One is to start a business, create it, grow it to significance, generate income, sell that business. A lot of people grossly underestimate the value of not paying taxes in increasing their wealth. So that'll be an exploration of one of the most powerful tools right now to reduce your taxable income.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys next month.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
panelists.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.